This is the champion's journey. I am Cory McCartney. Technology has helped innovate and in so many ways elevate sports at every level. All this week, we're putting the focus on companies that embody that marriage of sports and technology and continue to push boundaries. We begin with former MLB pitcher and renowned coach Dr. Tom House and Rocky Collis from Mustard, which is taking decades of House's work and getting it to the masses through a coaching app. Be sure to check back all this week as we continue the champion's journey. Now, here's my conversation with the folks from Mustard. Welcome in Rocky Collis and Dr. Tom House, co-founders of Mustard, an app that brings world-class coaching to athletes of all ages. Rocky, Dr. House, thanks for the time.
My pleasure. Good to be
Thanks
here.
for having us.
Mustard utilizes existing smartphone technology, is based on the decades of teaching and data collection by Dr. House, who obviously a resume as a coach is unparalleled, along with the work of renowned mental performance coach Jason Goldsmith. What was the need that you two saw in the marketplace that sought to fill it with Mustard?
Rocky, you want to lead it off first?
Sure, happy to. Cory, in short, most kids end up quitting sports by the time they're about 13 or 14. And we think that's because they don't have access to reasonable coaching. Coaching gets expensive. And so at a certain age, kids are playing against competition that's better than them because the competition's gotten good coaching and a lot of kids haven't. We saw an opportunity with Tom House, who we really think is the most successful personal athletic coach of all time, to take the scientific methods he uses with the best athletes in the world, the Drew Breeses and Tom Brady's and Cole Hamels of the world, and give them to every kid on earth directly through a smartphone. We think that it's something that we like to say is going to revolutionize the power of play. It's going to give a lot of kids the opportunity to play sports longer in life and get to realize all the great character development that comes from being a part of a team sport a little bit later in life. The technology that was at our disposal to start this was ripe, and so the timing has to be right on these things. And we're lucky for us that it was, and we were able to recruit a team to get it done.
Certainly, a lot of things in terms of individual coaching have been elevated by COVID-19. Dr. House, did you sort of pick up on that as you saw Mustard being this opportunity to take things to the masses?
Well, I'd like to say that I understood everything that was going on with the technology. I knew our research and all our data capture and our models were second to none, whether it was biomechanics, functional strength, nutrition and sleep for recovery, or mental emotional for performance under stress and anxiety. I knew all that was really solid stuff, but I didn't realize until I started pounding around with Rocky that there were some really, really smart people out there. I call them propeller heads, but that could actually take what was in my head and what we have been doing over the last 35, 40 years and actually become a mentoring device, like taking me and putting me in front of a family that had a 12 and an 11-year-old, or in your case, a 14 and 11-year-old, and afford you the same exact information and instruction that our elite athletes were getting. And so pounding around with Rocky has kind of been a dream come true for me, because I thought it was stopping with me. And now it looks like we're going to be able to actually help and influence, a whole bunch of kids worldwide.
There are a number of mechanical analysis companies that exist, but they typically rely on an additional device to make it happen. How does Mustard work in terms of evaluating an athlete and providing feedback?
Yeah, it's really simple, Cory. So basically, we take any normal video. You can take a video through our app, or you can upload a video that you've taken on your phone or really any camera device. And in about 30 seconds, you get a biomechanical report card on your mechanics, and you get recommendations from Tom House that are tailored specific for your inefficiencies. We're right now in beta just with a pitching product, but very soon we'll be in all the sports that Tom is famous for. So we'll work with hitters, both baseball and softball. Eventually we'll work with quarterbacks, and we'll work with golfers and tennis players pretty soon too.
Dr. House, are there model mechanics that you use as a foundational piece for this? And if so, who is it that makes up that model?
The model actually came from our research. I have right now a little over 900 major league pitchers in the computer at 1,000 frames a second. And we have from that data capture derived 11 variables that if you follow the process from the most important variable right down to the least important variable, you get, like Rocky said, you get an evaluation and a report card. And with that evaluation and whatever issues you have, we also have deliverables or teaches. It's personally adaptive, it's age specific. Think of it this way, there's one set of rules, but there's 100 million applications. And that's what there's a lot of technology out there that can measure. In today's world, I think baseball has come a long way with measurement, but very few people can quantify and come up with a deliverable or a teach to fix what they measure.
How does it adjust to age? I mean, certainly Dr. House, one of your most famous clients, Nolan Ryan, you could say maybe perfect mechanics there, but how does it adjust for say a child who's looking to increase his mechanics, but obviously isn't anywhere in the skill level of a player of that magnitude?
That's a great question, Cory. And Rocky, I'll start it off, and then if I miss something, you can fill in. There are windows of trainability, and they're age specific. And in general terms, your first window is neurological, and that's for male or female athletes from 6, 7 years old until 12, 13, or 14, depending how quickly the hormones show up. The second window of trainability is muscle or strength, and that usually goes from 13, 14 until 18 or 19. The third window is skill acquisition, and that's when nerves and muscles can talk to each other. That's when you work on skill, and that window is 19 or 20 years old until 32 or 33. And then the last window is skill retention. And that probably gets the most visibility of what I'm doing right now because of the Drew Brees and the Tom Brady and athletes that are playing into their 40s. That last window, skill retention, it winds down. You can't beat father time or mother time or whatever you want to call it. 45 is about it. But there's no reason you can't do at 45 what you did at 25, as long as you have the proper process and application. Did that cover it, Rocky? Did I hit them all?
Yeah, no, I think you did. So I'll just add on a little bit to talk about how it works in the application. It's a really important question, Cory. I always tell people, if you look at the athletes across multiple sports, the rotational sports that we're in, baseball, football, golf, you look at the folks that have had Hall of Fame level success into their 40s, a shocking percentage of them have trained with Tom House. So there's really something there to learn from him, not just in terms of enhancing performance in the short term, but making sure it lasts. So that's something we've been really thoughtful about. How are we going to build that into the app and make sure that people are getting age-specific advice? In the short term, we're going to do something really simple, which is just ask people to input their ages. And then based on the age that they input, they will get different recommendations back from the app. So as Tom was describing, at certain ages, it's going to be more exercise-based. At certain bases, it's going to be more positional or mechanical fixes. And we'll learn kind of how users are engaging with the app while we're in this beta phase, and we'll continue to build those age-specific features out.
Certainly, we're talking a lot about mechanics, fine-tuning mechanics. Where does the development of cognitive, social, emotional skills come into play?
I'll start it off, and again, Rocky, you can back me up.
Yeah.
I think Yogi Berra said it best that 90% of sports are 50% mental. And in today's world, most of the kids go home because of what's going on between their ears. They give up because they're not having fun. They have performance anxieties. It becomes an outcome-based evaluation where they have a lot of trouble dealing with failure. And we've got a guy who's obvious. I wish he was with us right now on this Zoom call, but we're actually able to measure what's going on in the brain in real time and find out how engaged a young man, boy or girl are involved in their preparation or competition. You can actually, it looks like a sweatband, put it on, you can wear it underneath your hat, and it'll actually give real data on what's going on inside your brain, why the the child is working or playing. So it's for the first time in the history of, we're able to quantify in real time, in practice and in competition, what these young people are going through mentally.
Yeah, Tom House typically doesn't need any backup, but I'll try to just add on a little bit there. Jason Goldsmith, to me, is like the Tom House of mental performance training. So there's a lot of parallels in the way they work, and that's why they work so well together. So you think about Tom's career, for 45 years, he's been doing this intense scientific research about the way the body moves best for a particular sport. And not just the research, he then takes that research and figures out, as he said, what are the teachables to help people get their data to improve. So it's not just a matter of showing somebody there's this deficiency in the data, go ahead and correct it. It's a matter of experimenting with different teachables and figuring out, when you say something to somebody, how do they react, and what do they do with their body then to improve the data. So Tom has done the research and then figured out the teachables. And what's unique about Jason, as Tom was describing, Jason has this incredible piece of technology that he's worked with for many years now called the Focus Band. It's an EEG reader that measures athletes' brain frequencies. To my knowledge, it's the only EEG reader on the market that you can wear while you move around. So most EEG readers, you have to sit perfectly still. They're for meditating, or doctors use them in a doctor's office. Focus Band, we have sewn into some of our athletes' hats or helmets. Some of the Hall of Fame people that Tom and Jason work with that you would have heard of are using this on a day-to-day basis. Now, what that means is that Jason's done research just like Tom has. So for many years, Jason's been working with these top athletes. Primarily, he works with golfers. He tests out different protocols, different pre-shot routines, and he's able to actually, in real time, understand whether those protocols and routines help the athlete more consistently get into the flow state or the zone, or whether brain frequencies are jumping because of something Jason's saying, or somebody's annoyed with his voice or whatever it may be. So Jason has these protocols that are scientifically proven, just like Tom does, and he's got these teachables that are scientifically proven. So for us, we have the opportunity first in the near term to democratize those protocols. So through the app, there's going to be a lot of mental performance training content from Jason and from Tom and from a bunch of our athletes and advisors. And it's not going to just be somebody's idea about what's good mental performance training content, but it's going to be these proven concepts that have been studied using Focus Band. And then eventually Focus Band is part of our company too. So we will be finding kind of more accessible ways to sell that product so that more people can experience the power of it. But really, it's these protocols that have been scientifically proven that we're anxious to get out into the world and let kids benefit from them.
A couple of bigger picture questions. I mean, certainly a lot of coaching situations that this applies to, but do you see this application where it can be utilized for scouting, college recruiters? I mean, is that kind of a vision for it as well?
Go ahead, Rocky, because you've actually had hands-on in the last 3 or 4 months with exactly that. So
no, I'm happy to answer that. Thanks. The answer is yes. There's lots of applications for that. We have lots of interest from Major League Baseball teams. As I tell everybody, including the teams that we're talking to, the mission and soul of the company is really to help young athletes and kids as much as we can. And so everything we're doing is with that mission and soul in mind, and figuring out how we can do that better. Now, for us to partner with a couple major league teams, maybe 1 or 2, is probably a good thing for the learnings that we'll get from that team in terms of the things that we're capturing, the data we're capturing, the teachables that are being given to kids, and of course in terms of a marketing partnership. So we'll do that. The scouting uses of our technology are, in fact, probably game changing. It's just not the core of what we're interested in doing as a company, but what we will allow it to be used. So the reason our technology is so important for scouting is because, unlike I think anything else I'm aware of out there, we can capture 3D biomechanical data from basically any camera angle. So a scout in the stands can take a video with the phone and get a 3D biomechanical report on a pitcher, for example. They don't have to set up a tripod and be at a very specific angle. So clearly there's a lot of interest in that from a scouting standpoint. For us, I think the more interesting scouting thing is really long-term. It's not something to be done in the next couple of years. But after we've been around for a while, you'll be able to look at somebody's biomechanical journey throughout their young life. And we think that that's going to provide a lot more important insights into their projectability than the information that teams have now. So to be able to track how somebody moved when they were 13, 14, 15, all the way through 18, understand the differences, understand what they're maybe a little bit about their work ethic, we think that's going to end up speaking a lot more to projectability. So eventually there are some scouting, kind of data licensing uses for us. In the short term, it's more about just using the technology while people are in the stands.
You guys have both mentioned, obviously in beta for baseball right now, plans to expand. I mean, you have the backing of the likes of Nolan Ryan, Drew Brees, Mia Hamm's an advisory role. Clearly individuals who understand what it takes to reach the heights of their sport. I mean, and I think speaks to how meaningful this can be for in impacting future generations well beyond baseball.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And Cory, before we started this interview, we talked about your boys, and there's point in time capacity and projectable capacity. So what we're able to do with this app is we could film your kids doing something in the backyard, and depending on what they filled out on their personal history, we could actually tell you their legs are contributing X to velocity, their torso is contributing X to velocity, their arms, put them all together. And if they've grown 3 inches and gained 15 pounds, that is a different model than if they haven't grown or gained any weight. In other words, we can identify point in time capacity and projected capacity, biological age and chronological age, from, like I said, first window at 7, 8 years old, all the way up to a 42 or 44-year-old. So it does have application in the elite sports environment. It shortens trails for scouts, and it gives them a template that they can compare with their own data. We complement everybody. We don't confront. We don't say that you're wrong and we're right. But I think we have the best complementary data that exists in sports today.
You have to ask about the name. I mean, certainly you think about put some mustard on it. Who came up with the name, and is that where it derived from?
Okay, Rocky, this is yours, because I sat for 7 hours one day and just watched the process. Yeah. And it ended up being just fine, but it was crazy. Go ahead, Rob.
Yeah, no, we went through a long naming process where we actually talked to a lot of youth athletes in the sports that we'll be in initially, and tried to figure out what would resonate with them. It was really important to us that that we built a brand that is fun, right? I mean, part of the point of this, when we talk about the power of play, it's supposed to be play, and so we don't want our company to feel like a place people are coming to work. It's a place people are coming to improve at the thing that they play. And so mustard, yes, put some extra mustard on it, cut the mustard. Those were phrases that we heard from kids, and it kind of surprised us. But the fact that kids kind of knew those phrases made us start really thinking seriously about the name mustard. And then it kind of checked all the boxes for us, right? Like, it's playful, it's accessible. You think about a hot dog at the ballpark. The fact that it's a condiment rather than something super fancy sounding. So as we just played around with a bunch of names, it was the one that everybody fell for. I won't tell you the specific stories for the interview, but we had a couple other names that we ran across people in different cultures and different countries around the world, and they ended up meaning like these obscene things in other languages that we never would have thought of. So a couple names got scratched off because of that. But mustard rose to the top, let's say.
Well, I think we can all agree putting ketchup on a hot dog is blasphemy. So at least you guys went in the proper direction there. Want to shift directions in your own past of this endeavor. Dr. House, I think every sports fan is familiar with you, even if they don't realize it. Obviously, is the pitcher who was in the bullpen catching Hank Aaron's historic 715th home run during your 8-year MLB career. You've been go on to coach the likes of Randy Johnson, Nolan Ryan, Brady, Brees, Tim Tebow. Being called the father of modern pitching mechanics. What is coaching and the development of players meant to you, and how has that experience helped shape a desire to take elite coaching and offer it to the masses?
Well, Cory, I got really lucky. I hit the crease between old school and new school. where it was what you thought your eyes were telling you versus what technology could actually tell you. And I'd like to say it was well thought out and well planned out. It just kind of happened organically. So when I got involved with motion analysis in the late 80s, we actually captured data for a couple of years. I didn't even know what I was looking at. But eventually one day it started to permeate the concrete I call my brain, and we started seeing things that were really going on with movement. And it started off with baseball, but went to, like Rocky said, all rotational sports. And when we finally started being able to quantify real movements and then identify when a movement was improper, what the injury or the lack of performance that came with that inefficiency, then it got really smart. And then we figured out with movement, you have to have the functional strength to support that movement. How many pitches is too many? How many is not enough? What you can accelerate or decelerate. And again, it sounds now like it was very well thought out. It was just luck of the draw and figuring out what did or didn't work. And pretty soon we had a movement model and a physical preparation model that matched up pretty solid. Then we realized that you have to recover from workloads and strength building, and if you're in a deficit, et cetera, et cetera. So recovery with nutrition and sleep, that added in, and then luck of the draw, the mental emotional stuff. My PhD is actually in performance psychology, so I always knew that what was going on between someone's ears was huge in the long haul, whether it was a little leaguer or a major leaguer. And then here comes Jason with the ability to measure it. So that's how it all fit together. And I think we're just scratching the surface. I think sports have come a long way, and there's some great research out there and some really smart people. But we've kind of jump-started. I think we're 4 or 5 years ahead of everybody with actually being able to put something in your hands or an athlete's hands that will actually help them.
Rocky, you were a pitcher in the Mariner system. Your brother Luke, a two-time Arena Bowl champ, was one of Dr. House's students. How did that relationship lead to this partnership and trying to help Dr. House's teachings, reach an entire new audience?
Yeah, well, first of all, I'm impressed. To find anything about my baseball career, you had to do deep research. So
you were a 28th round pick, if I do believe.
That's right. Yeah, you really did research. I appreciate that. Yeah, for me, first of all, despite the fact that obviously my baseball career didn't go where I dreamt it would, I always knew how much value I was getting out of sports. So this was always, even when I was playing, I was working in after school centers in the off season trying to help kids get more access to sports. This was always kind of, if I'm going to make a difference in the world, this was something I was passionate about, trying to figure out how we could get more kids to have access to the opportunities that I had. After I was done playing, after I got released and played independent ball a little bit, went to law school, got to work at some great law firms. And again, I noticed even in interviews for these law firms that, all they wanted to talk about was my baseball career. And so I knew kind of how lucky I was to have had that and how meaningful it was to my life. I met Tom because my brother, as you mentioned, was a quarterback. He's training with Tom. And I used to, on my commute to my law office in LA, I would stop by and listen to Tom's Chalk Talks in the morning. I just felt like, first of all, they were so cool, right? There's all these Hall of Fame athletes there sitting around listening to Tom talk about mental approach to sports. But I also felt like they helped me kind of get focused and get in the zone for the day. So that's how I got to know Tom, was through my brother that way. Years later, I got much more into entrepreneurial work and became, passionate about helping startup companies. And my brother suggested I talk to Tom and Jason that they had this idea for a startup company that might, we might be able to find a way to work together. So that's how it all came together. And so for me, it's definitely a combination of lifelong passions that I'm super lucky to get to work on. To get to work on it with Tom House is just ridiculous for me. You can see behind me, I've got my Nolan Ryan Pitcher's Bible there, which is literally my copy from when I was a kid. It's a book that I literally, in large part, learned how to pitch from when I was young, and I've kept it all these years. And so now to actually work with Tom House for me is an unbelievable thrill, and I'm excited that we can take what's in his brain get it out into the world in a way that's going to be personally adaptive for people. I think that's going to make a big difference.
Well, teachings that were once reserved for elite athletes only now have a new avenue. To request early access to beta testing, go to teammstrd.com. Give them a follow on Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook, also at Team MSTRD. Rocky, Dr. House, thank you so much for the time.
Cory, thanks for your time also.
Thank you, Cory.